Hilchos Maaseh Hakorbanos, Perek Shishi, the laws of the sacrificial procedures, chapter 6. Finally, we're moving in to specific korbanot. First 5 chapters was all about the generalities. Species of korbanot, the nisachim, the accompanying libations, general rules about how to slaughter, how to sprinkle, where to sprinkle. What do you do with the skins? That was yesterday. And today, we're moving into the first specific category of korban, the korban oila. Oila means the burnt offering. And the Rambam today is going to walk us through the step-by-step procedure for how to offer the classic burnt offering. And by the way, much of what the Rambam is going to say today, the source for it in the Talmud is when discussing the korban tamid. The daily sacrifice in the temple was an oila. And so the Mishnah and the Gemara give all the details about that. The Rambam applies it over here to any burnt offering because that's the truth. That's how every burnt offering was brought. Says the Rambam Malacha Aleph, mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment. La'asos ha'oila kimishpata haksuva b'Torah. To do or to follow the procedure of offering a burnt offering just like the law that's stated in the Torah. Interestingly, when it comes to ritual things, sacrifices, ritual impurity, most of the details are clear in the Torah. Same thing with the sacrifices, with the korban oila. Most of it is written clearly in the first half of the chapter 1 of the book of Vayikra. But the Rambam is going to go into the details and give us everything we have to know. B'keitzad Maaseh oila, how exactly do you go about offering the burnt offering? So the first thing is, sheichit v'zoyrek hadam k'moshe b'yarnu. You slaughter and you sprinkle the blood as we explained. So actually has 2 steps because you're slaughtering, someone standing by to receive the blood, takes the blood, goes to the altar, sprinkles it on 2 corners, diagonal corners, on the bottom half of the mizbeach as we explained. Umafshit umenateach, then you skin it, and then you cut it up, which also has a very specific procedure. We're going to get to it later today. Umaktir kol ha-nesachim al gabei ha-mizbeach, and then you take all the parts as they're cut up, and you offer them, as you see over here in the bottom right corner, on the mizbeach. Shenemar, as it says, v'hiktir hakoyen es hakoil ha-mizbecha. At the end of the paragraph in the Torah talking about the oila, so it says the Kohen would offer everything on the mizbeach. It means it's part of the procedure. That you first skin it, cut it up over here, and then you offer everything onto the main fire on the altar. Halacha beis, tzemer shebirashe kvasim. V'seyar shebizkan hatyashim. Any wool that's on the head of the sheep, and any hair that's in the beard area of the goats, bones and sinews, and horns and hoofs, if they're still attached to the animal, you offer everything, including the hair. Now, the Rambam only picks the hair on the head because, as we're going to see, the animal was skinned before it was offered, so the rest of the hair is obviously not there. But the head was offered whole. So if the head had hair and it was attached, you put it on the mizbeach. But if any of these separated, if the hair came off, if the hoofs were chopped off, they don't go onto the mizbeach. Shenemar, because it says, when the Torah talks about sacrificing the oila, it says, Ve'asisa oileisecha habasar v'hadam. Torah specifies your burnt offerings, the flesh and the blood. Which means that that's really what you're after. You're after offering the flesh and the blood. Not the hoofs, not the horns. If they're attached, you bring them. But if they're not attached, you don't bring them. The kulan shepaku me'ala mizbeach, any parts of an animal sacrifice that kind of flew off the altar. Sometimes you have a fire and it cackles, it can blow things off. So if part of the meat was blown off, lo yachzer, you don't put it back. Truth is also even a coal from the fire, nothing to do with the pieces of meat. If any of the wood pile blew off the mizbeach, lo yachzer, you don't put it back. Halacha Gimel, Eivarim shepaku me'ala mizbeach. If the limbs of an animal flew off the mizbeach, so before we're talking about the other things, the hair, the hoofs, the horns, now the actual limbs. If the actual limbs flew off the mizbeach, im yesh bahen mamish, if they still have substance, afilu paku achar chatzos halayla, even if they flew off after midnight, which typically they wouldn't do anything after midnight. We learned 2 days ago that you can continue offering parts of a sacrifice which didn't finish during the night, but only till chatzos, as the sages said, till midnight. But here, if you have a piece of meat with substance and it comes off after midnight, yachzer, you put it back. Shenemar, as it says, al moikda, al hamizbeach, kol halayla. On the fire, on the mizbeach, all night. That's literally the verse that talks about the oila. Zois teiras ha'oila. He ha'oila, it's the burnt offering that stays on fire all night. Which means that as long as it's burning actual meat, you can put it back on the fire all night. But if it's already so burnt that there's no substance, even if they flew off before midnight, you don't put it back on, you just leave it off the mizbeach. If the meat was only singed, it was scorched, it dried like wood, but you can still see it's there, upaku, and then it flew off, so it's not here nor there. It doesn't have full substance, but you can't say it doesn't have substance at all. It's still got something. So before midnight, when anyway you're still offering leftover fats and limbs, put it back on the mizbeach. But if it's after midnight, then you don't put it back. Halacha dalet. When you cut up, slice up all the limbs of the burnt offering to go onto the mizbeach, the first thing you do is you bring everything to the ramp. This is the mizbeach, kind of a far out view. You would bring all the limbs over here to the bottom of the ramp, and you would salt them there. As we saw, the salt was actually midway through the ramp over here, so you would kind of bring it halfway up, salt all the limbs, and then you'd bring everything up to the top, up here, top of the mizbeach. The sciatic nerve, the nerve in the animal which we're forbidden to eat. The Kohen would remove it right here, next to the fire on top of the mizbeach, and he would throw that onto the ash pile that was in the middle of the mizbeach. I'm not sure if you can see it right over here. There was 3 wood piles consistently on the mizbeach, and in the middle was a big pile of ash. So the Gid HaNosha went to the big pile of ash in the middle, and then v'zoyrek kol ha'evarim al ha'esh. There's a mitzvah to throw the limbs onto the fire. It's kind of, you can see it over here, a little better depicted. See, all the Kohanim are holding their pieces and they're getting ready to throw it. They throw it onto the fire. Shenemar, because it says, habasar v'hadam, same verse as before. Oilesecha habasar v'hadam, the flesh and the blood. There's something that the flesh and the blood share. Kashem shahadam bizrika, kach kol habasar bizrika. The same way the blood, how was it applied to the mizbeach? It was sprinkled onto the mizbeach. So the meat, or it was kind of thrown onto the mizbeach. The meat also had to be thrown onto the mizbeach. Now, you try throwing a bunch of pieces of animal meat onto a fire, it gets pretty disorganized. So then says the Rambam, the achar shezerkan, after they would throw all the limbs onto the fire, you have to go and organize them. And that's this guy's job, as you can see from far over here. These kohanim are all throwing pieces onto the fire, but he has a pitchfork, and he's kind of in the fire, flipping the barbecue. He's organizing the cuts on the flames. Shenemar, as it says, ve'orach hakohen oisam. It says clearly in Torah, the kohen should set them up, which means that there's a point at which on the fire you set it up. Ve'ivarim shetzlan, ve'achar kach helon lamizbeach. If the kohanim would have taken the limbs, roasted them first, and then put them on the mizbeach, ein bahem mishum reach nechayach, they don't achieve the pleasing aroma. Thank you for Hashem. They have to do it in the way that it says in the Torah. Put the limbs right on the mizbeach. Don't go roasting them before. Halacha hey, ketzad menatchin nasayla. Let's get into it. How do we cut up the burnt offering? It's a very, very detailed procedure, and I'm going to use these pictures from the Art Scroll Gemara in Maseches Tamid, because again, the source for the next couple of halachas is from Tractate Tamid, which talks about the daily sacrifice in the temple, which they followed the same exact procedure because it was a burnt offering. And the Rambam from there learns to every other burnt offering. Ketzad menatchin asa'ila, how do you cut up the burnt offering? So the first thing is, lo haya shover asaregel. Unlike most butchers would do at the time, they wouldn't break the leg. What does this mean? So over here you can see, this is a cow, but same thing for a sheep. The bone structure of an animal's leg has 3 parts. You have this bone, cannon bone, then you have the shank bone, the tibia, and then you have the femur bone, the highest bone. So usually what butchers used to do is they used to take it either at this point, usually at this point, after the animal was dead, they would break this leg, so it created a sharp angle, and then they would actually make a hole in the other leg over here and stick one leg through the other leg, make like an X, hang it onto a hook and skin it. Here though, as we're going to see momentarily, one of the first things that was cut off of the animal to be offered in the mizbeach was the bottom bone of the foot. So it would be pointless to break that foot and use that as a support for the skinning, because that foot was going to be cut off in a moment. So instead, the Rambam says, Lo haya shever es haregel, you wouldn't break the bone of the foot, as the butchers usually did, elo noikvai. You would actually make a hole in the leg, v'toyle boy, and hang it by that hole, umafshit, and then skin, as is depicted over here. There were these poles in the temple courtyard with a hook coming out of it, and you made a hole directly in the joint of the leg, hung the entire animal by this joint, and began to skin. If it was an ox, you would skin it without hanging. The Mishnah talks about a sheep, because the sheep was the daily karban tamid. It was a smaller animal, you could hang it. An ox, obviously, if you're going to try to hang an entire ox by its leg, that's not going to work so well. So you just skin it on the floor without hanging it. And the way you would skin it was as follows. Umafshit ad shehu magia lechazeh. Once the animal is hanging in this position, so the top is the foot and the head is at the bottom, and you're kind of skinning downwards. So you would slit the animal open from here, the hind part, all the way to the breast in the front. Higia lechazeh, once you reached the breast area, chaysech es harosh. At this point, you completely cut off the head, v'noisne lakayin, and you give it to one of the kohanim, the one who was going to carry the head to the mizbeach. Of course, the head was already partially severed during shchita, during the slaughtering. But now you're going to fully sever it all the way. And they would do it just right by the, I couldn't get a picture, but basically there's these two, what they call occipital condyles in the back of the animal's head at the top, which matches up, aligns with the first cervical vertebrae going into the spine. That's where they would cut it off at that point. Then, you cut off the kra'ayim. A kra'ayim literally means feet, but it's a reference specifically to the bottom bone, this cannon bone, on all four legs. You cut off all four kra'ayim. Over here is the kera, you can see the kera foot. Here's another kera, here's another kera, here's another kera. The kra'ayim were all cut off. V'noisnan la'acher, you give them to a second kohen. So now you have a kohen holding the head, you have a kohen holding the 4 feet. Umashlim es hahefshet, and now you finish the skinning. So all the skin is off. Then the kaireya es halev umaitzi es damai. You tear open the heart and you remove its blood. Any blood that gathers inside the heart during shchita is considered to be not kosher. Not only not kosher for consumption, but also not kosher for the mizbeach. And so you would cut it open and you would take out the blood and only then offer it on the mizbeach. Now the commentaries point out that this would be pretty hard to do at this point. If all you've done is slit open the animal's bottom, the heart is inside the rib cage. It's very not accessible. The Rosh writes that this line has to be printed later. In other words, you wouldn't do this heart part at this point, you did it later on, once you could reach the heart. But definitely at whatever point it was that you were able to access the heart, you would take out the blood of the heart. Then, you would completely cut off the forelegs. So you already cut off the kra'ayim, which is the bottom part of the foreleg, but now you're cutting off the entire thing, up to the top bone. In this case, the humerus. This is the back side, but same would be for the front side. You cut off, maybe we can see it over here better. Here's a picture. This is the left foreleg, this is the right foreleg. So you cut it off basically all the way to the top. That's where you would cut off the yadayim. And you give it to now a third kohen. Head, feet, forelegs. Allah l'regel yamini, you ascend to the right hind leg. Why is it called ascending? Because again, the animal is hanging downwards. So if you're dealing with the forelegs over here, now you go up to the right hind leg, this one over here. You cut it off, and you would give it to the same kohen who won the head. Why does he say zacha? Because we're going to see that at least when it came to the daily sacrifice, there was a lottery for which kohen would get which limbs. And whichever kohen got the head also got to carry the right hind leg, and that's because, as Rashi explains, in times of old, in the market, it was customary to sell the head with the right hind leg. They came together as a package deal. People like to buy them together. So in the Beis HaMikdash as well, whoever got the head also got the right hind leg. Ushtei beitzim ima. The 2 testicles would always be cut off with the right hind leg and go to this kohen. Oila is always a male. It cannot be a female. So that's why the Rambam always says that the shtei beitzim would go with the right hind leg. The achar kach, Now you can't cut off the left leg just yet, because the left leg is what's holding up the whole animal on the hook. Now you tear open the animal's actual system, till the intestines are revealed. So you're cutting a little deeper, not just making a slit to get the skin off, but you're going deeper in. And you take the fats, and we're specifically referring to the fat that covered the digestive system. The greater omentum, it's called in English. Some say it also includes the lesser omentum, which is the part that covers the entire stomach system from the top as well. But you're taking this fat, and you use it to cover the head, the area where it was slit, which is very bloody and not so nice. The fats would kind of be a nice sheet of covering over the head. So you basically ended up holding the head upside down. I wonder if you can see it in this picture. Again, all a depiction. But here you can see the guy, here's the Kohen holding the head, and it's covered by a piece of fat. And he's also in his other hand holding the right hind leg. As we said, the guy who has the head also gets the leg. And then, now you go back to the animal, and you take out all the intestines, and you give it to another Kohen. This is the fourth Kohen. So you have now one Kohen with the head and the leg, 4 feet, the 4 legs, the intestines. This Kohen who just got the intestines had to go and wash them with water. Shenemar says clearly in the pasuk, "V'hakerev, v'hakra'ayim, yirchatz b'moyim." Here it is. The insides and the feet you wash in water. Lo b'yayin, v'lo b'mezeg, v'lo b'shar mashkin. Not with wine, not with diluted mixtures of wine and water, no other liquids, only water. V'chol ha'meim is ksherin, but all water is kosher. It's not like mikveh water or a special law. Just as long as it's water, it's kosher. So they actually had a chamber that was called Lishkas HaMedichin, the chamber where they used to wash. There was apparently access to water there from a stream that was brought in, kind of like, what do you call it? Like wired in, irrigated in? A channel, yeah, it was channeled in, there you go.
Where does this water go? I mean, it's like full of blood.
Yes, so we're going to see it later. There was a hole on the other side of the temple courtyard where it would flow out. Kama medichan, how many times do you wash them? Hakares, so the actual stomach, the paunch, medichin oisa bebeisa medichin kol tzarka. They would take it into the chamber where they used to wash the stuff, and you wash it out fully till it's fully washed. The way the commentators explain it, till there was like this fat that would adhere to it from the outside. All that firm adhesion should go off. Hakravayim, the actual intestines, the kishkes, ein peichasin mishalish pa'amim, no less than 3 times. You have to run the water through the intestines 3 times. But these were washed not in the chamber of the washing, but in the tables that would sit between the poles. Right near the altar, if you can see it over here, there was a bunch of poles, low poles where they would do the skinning, and next to each pole there was a table. On this table, that's where they used to wash the intestines. Halacha Zayin, while this Kohen, this 4th Kohen, who's carrying the intestines is busy washing them, the Kohen who's skinning is back to business. Not ala sasakin. The Kohen takes the knife, umafrish asareya min hakaved, and he separates the lungs from the liver. Now he's already kind of inside the rib cage, and he's not removing anything, but he's just making some separations, so later on more cutting could be done. You separate the lungs from the liver, ve'etzba hakaved min hakaved, and you separate what's called the lobe of the liver from the liver. Here you can see it maybe better. This is called the etzba hakaved over here, this little lobe. The caudate lobe of the liver, you separate it from the liver. Don't move the liver from its place. We're just separating now. And then, once you've done that, you pierce or you puncture the breast area and you give it to another Kohen. The breast area was over here. It was a small area of fatty meat. With the knife, you would cut into it. Maybe better seen over here. This part of it, this little circle. You would cut into it all around, cut it off, and now you have the whole breast meat and you give it to a Kohen. And then, you would go up to the right flank. Doifen means wall. The right side of the animal, essentially. So you're done with the breast over here, you go up. Up means you're just ascending in order of the skinning, in order of where the animal's position is. And you're dealing with this whole right side now.
The right side from the back.
Yeah, which is, it's the animal's right side also, right? If you think about an animal standing, right, this would be the animal's right side.
So you would be looking at it from behind.
Right. from behind underside. Yeah. V'choisech v'yored, and you cut in. So you're cutting in now to the flesh to kind of separate this flank, ad hashedra, till the spine. The spine is on the opposite side of the animal, it's the upside of the animal. So you're going all the way into the spine. V'lo yiga b'shedra, don't touch the spine, because the spine is going to belong with the left side, not with the right. Ad shu magia l'shtei tzlois rakos, till you reach the two soft ribs at the end of the rib cage. You cut off that entire right flank, and you give it to a sixth Kohen. The hakaveh tluyaba, with the liver hanging. Having separated the liver before, the liver will detach with the right flank, and you give it to the Kohen carrying the right flank. Halacha ches, bale lageira, you come to the neck. In other words, you're cutting down from the flank, right? So you're cutting down the entire side, and now you've reached the neck area down over here. The head's already been severed, given to a Kohen, now you have the neck. Maniach ba shtei tzlois mikan or shtei tzlois mikan. You leave the first two ribs of the rib cage as part of the neck. You cut it off, you give it to a seventh Kohen. Attached to the neck are the trachea, the windpipe, the heart, which you tore out before, and the lungs. You come to the left flank. And you would leave also 2 ribs on top, 2 ribs on bottom. The same way you left it on the right side. Which means you left over on 2 flanks, 2 ribs on each side, top and bottom, so 4 on 4. You cut off the entire left flank, whatever remains. Give it to an 8th Kohen, with the spine and the spleen also attached to it, and that was the next section. Now you're basically, I don't know if you're following the picture, but you're basically left with nothing, because all this has been taken away. You only have the back part of the animal. So you come out to the back, you cut it off, you give it to another Kohen, with the fatty tail and the cutted lobe of the liver, and 2 kidneys are with it. And then, you take the last leg off the hook, that's been holding up the animal the entire time, pull it off, and you give it to the last Kohen. This is the order in which you skin and you cut the animal burnt offering. And these are the cuts, which Torah refers to when it says, it says clearly, you skin the burnt offering and you cut it to its parts. What's its parts? Its parts is the parts that by tradition we've received. This is how you do it. Now, by the way, the commentaries to the Mishnah say that this sequence is just the most practical. There is no sequence given in the Torah for how to do it. But according to Halacha, we do this way because it's the easiest access to all the different limbs. Halacha Yud, Bekama Melichin Asayvadim Lakevesh. How many Kohanim are used now to bring the limbs to the ramp? If it's a sheep, smaller animal, 6 Kohanim are needed in total to carry everything. Harishan B'Reishu B'Regel, the first guy carries the head and the leg. This is more of a picture of the Karban Tamid, so there's little variations here, but let's just start from this guy. He's holding the head and the leg. Hareish B'Yaminai, the head is in his right hand. V'Chatmai Kelape Zroya, the nose is facing downwards, facing his forearm. V'Karnav Bein Etzba'esav, the horns, upward between his fingers. Ubeis Shchita L'Maila, and the area where it's been slaughtered is facing upwards. V'Hapeder Aleha, covered by the fats, as we said before. He's holding the right hind leg in his left hand with its skin facing outwards. That's one Kohen. And again, he can do both because it's a sheep. It's small, easy to carry. Second Kohen is carrying both forelegs. The right one in his right hand, left in his left hand. Also with their skin facing outside. Third Kohen is standing with the back tail and the last over hind leg. The tail in his right hand, with the fat of the tail actually hanging between his fingers. Carrying in the right hand the caudate lobe of the liver and the 2 kidneys. And the left hind leg in his left hand with the skin facing outwards. The 4th Kohen is carrying both the breast and the neck, both fairly small cuts when it comes to the sheep. the breast meat in his right hand, the neck in his left, with the ribs that were attached to the neck, as we saw before, hanging down between his fingers. Hachamishi b'shtei tfanes. The fifth Kohen was responsible for both flanks. These are the biggest pieces. Shal yamin b'yamine v'shal smel b'smeile, right flank in his right hand, left flank in his left hand, with the skin area facing outwards. Hashishi b'kravayim, the sixth guy went with the intestines, nesunin babazech. Now he didn't carry the intestines in his hand. They were in a pan. Ukra'ayim al gabein milamayla, with the four bottom parts of the feet that were cut off at the beginning of the skinning are on top of the intestines. That is im hoysa ha'oila keves oyeis, if the burnt offering was a sheep or a goat. Aval im hoysa ayil, but if it was an older ram, molichin akravayim shnayim, you would have to have two people to take the intestines, because there's more intestines, more of the stomach, divided in two. V'chein ha'soila shel nesacheh biyad echad, v'hayayin biyad echad. The flour that was going to accompany the nesachim was given to one Kohen, and the wine was in the hands of another Kohen. So really, these are another two. This is like 8 now, right? Because 6 for the meat, but the flour and the wine. If it was a ram, you need double the flour and more of the wine. So it was 2 Kohanim carrying the flour, 2 Kohanim carrying the wine. You say salamid, which means in total, a sheep or a goat would using 8 Kohanim in total for the mizbeach. 6 for the meat, 2 for the nesachim. And the ram had 11 because there was 1 more Kohen for the intestines and 1 more Kohen for the flour and for the wine. Halacha yudches hashoyer. If you're dealing with an ox, you're in a whole other ballgame. Dealing with a bull, arba ve'esrim. You have to have 24 Kohanim carrying the ox to the mizbeach. It was cut the same way, it was skinned the same way, same process. But the limbs were divided amongst much more Kohanim because they're just bigger. Harishan melech hasarash. First guy, he only has the head, no leg. Takes 1 guy to carry an ox's head. It takes 2 Kohanim to deal with the right hind leg. It's a massive leg. Number 4 and number 5, again 2 Kohanim for the back part, the tail. Number 6 and number 7 are on the back left hind leg. The 8th guy is taking the breast on his own. You need 3 for the neck, because it's the whole neck area with 2 ribs. 3 Kohanim for the neck. Number 9, 10, and 11. 2 for the 2 forelegs, 2 for the 2 flanks. And 3 for the intestines, 3 for the flour, 3 for the wine. So we have 24. Now, why do you have to have 2 Kohanim start dragging the leg together? Or 3 Kohanim dragging the neck together? Cut the leg into 2 parts and finished. Take any big limb and split it amongst more Kohanim. Shenemar says that Rambam, you can't do that. Torah says, you cut it into its cuts. But its cuts cannot be cut into further cuts. So whatever the Torah says, if it's the whole hind leg comes as one, if you need 2 Kohanim to carry it, fine, let them carry it, but we're not going to cut up the piece further. That's only if it's a communal burnt offering. But an individual offering, if they wanted to get its cuts with more Kohanim or less, you can do it. So if the guy, let's say, is related to a bunch of Kohanim, he has a bunch of friends that are Kohanim, and he wants them all to be involved in a sacrifice, no problem. Or he has less, also fine. Halacha chaf. This is all for an animal. Oilas ha'oif. Ketzad ha'isa nasis. What about a bird? How do you do a bird burnt offering? So this is a little different. Oila la kevesh, upayna la soivev. You went up the ramp and turned to the walkway. So here's the walkway. The main ramp of the Mizbeach led you up all the way to the top. But the walkway went around the Mizbeach at about halfway point. And there was a side ramp coming off the main ramp that would take you to the Soivev directly. So the Kohen would walk up the ramp, turn to his right, and he would come to the southeastern corner, which is right here. Because this is the west, where the actual temple structure is, which means this is the east, and to the side is the south. So southeast over here is right over here. and he would do what's called melika. Melika just means slaughtering, but it's a special way of slaughtering. From the back of the neck, not with a knife, with a nail it was done. And he would fully sever the head. V'im lo hivdil psula. If he didn't separate it, it's disqualified. Part of the law, so it's clearly in the Torah, you have to separate the head from the neck. U'mematzeh dam harosh v'dam haguf. And you would squeeze out the blood from the head and the blood from the rest of the bird's body on the wall of the mizbeach, l'mayla min hachut shebe'emtza mizbeach, any point above the red strand that went around the halfway point of the mizbeach. So I guess if you were here, it would just be practical to do it over here. But the Torah says you have to squeeze, not sprinkle the blood. You take the actual head and you apply it to the mizbeach with pressure, and you would squeeze the blood out. Same with the body. You would apply it to the mizbeach with pressure, and you would squeeze the blood out. V'mitza dam harosh v'lo mitza dam haguf psula. If you only squeeze the blood from the head, not from the rest of the body, it's disqualified. Mitzah dam haguf v'lo mitzah dam harosh ksher. If you did only the body, not the head, it's kosher. But it's called mitzui, not zrika, because it's squeezing. Then halacha chaf aleph v'neitel es harosh. You would take the head, umakif beis milikasai lamizbeach, and beis milikasai means the area where it was severed. You bring that close to the mizbeach. V'soif goy b'melach. You dip it into salt, like a sponge. V'zerkei al gabi ha'isham, and throw it onto the fire. Ubali laguf, then you have the body of the bird. V'heiser es hamura v'ha'er she'aleha biyadai, and you would remove the mura as the crop. It's an area of the stomach where all the garbage goes. Take that out, and the skin around it with your hand, im hanoitza, with the feathers of the bird. There's b'nei me'ayim ha'yotzin ima, and all the intestines that come along with it, u'mashlichon lebeis hadeshen, and you throw it onto the ash pile. This was not burnt. This is more disgusting parts of the bird. We don't want it to go into the mizbeach. Rashi in the Torah actually says that the crop is where all the food goes, and we don't know what the bird may have eaten. It ate from someone else's property, so you burn it. And then it says, V'shisa oisei v'chnafav. You split it by its wings. Here. V'shisa oisei v'chnafav lo yavdil. You split it by its wings and you don't separate it. What does that mean? B'yodai b'loi sakin. This is now the body itself. You're splitting open the body but in its wing area. You don't have to sever the body into two. V'einei tzarich lahavdil shenemar lo yavdil. You don't have to separate it, it says you don't separate it, but it's not a prohibition. V'imhivdil kosher, if you did, it's kosher. Now you have the open body of the bird in front of you. V'soifgei b'melach v'zerkei al gabi ha'ishim. You again sponge dip it into salt, throw it onto the fire. Lo heiser es hamura, v'lo es hanoitza, v'lo es b'nei me'ayim, v'lo safka b'melach. If you didn't remove the crop, you didn't remove the feathers, you didn't remove the intestines, you didn't sponge dip it into salt, kol shashina ba me'achar tamtzes adam ksheira, whatever, after squeezing the blood in the mizbeach, that's the most integral part. Whatever changes you made afterwards is fine. Chav Gimel, we mentioned that you do malika. You slaughter it in a special way. Keitzad milkin. How does malika work? Kaitzetz v'yored batzipayren mimul eiref. You simply cut in to the animal's neck with your nail from the back. There was no shchita. When you slaughter, you have to go what's called helacha v'hava. You got to go back and forth. With a bird, it's just stick it in. If you wanted to go back and forth, that's fine. If you want to stick it in, go down with the nail, it's also fine. Even if by virtue of this sticking in, the pipes, which are the integral part for the shechita, if they became dislodged, you don't have to worry. And you cut through the spine with the bone, but don't cut most of the meat that's in the neck. If you cut most of the meat, the pipes are in the front. That's where the slaughtering takes place. But if you're going to cut through the back spine bone and most of its meat, it's already considered dead before you reach the pipes. And that's not okay. You have to cut the two pipes, and actually both of them, when you go down with your nail.
It has to have a knife.
No. It's all by hand. He literally says it right now. The hamolik bisakin, that's dadin. If you do malika with a knife or from the side, ain't a malika. It's not a good malika. It's like choking the animal, or it's like tearing it open. You have to go with the nail. The chol ha'orev kasher lemalika. Same way when it comes to shchita. The entire area of the neck is kosher for shchita. So too with malika, the entire area of the back of the neck. There's no specific point which is kosher, not kosher. The whole back of the neck is kosher for malika. But the bottom line is that the bird oila offering has to be slaughtered in that way.